if ever a story had been assembled by committee to tick almost all of our boxes on this programme, it would be the appointment of Sue Gray by Keir Starmer as his new chief of staff, and the response from the Daily Mail and sundry other useful idiots of utter fury and indignation. It's quite beautiful, despite the fact that, as ever, the fury is built, as far as I can tell, on absolutely nothing. The best thing about the responses to this story, and you can always tell how much bottom an alleged outrage has got by the calibre of the MP that the Daily Mail can get to comment on it. And no prizes for guessing which two MPs appear first in the Daily Mail's outrageous coverage of Sue Gray's appointment. Yeah, Nadine Dorries and Jacob Rees-Mogg, which tells you everything you need to know, doesn't it, really, about whether or not there's any basis whatsoever to this supposed scandal. But they don't know what they're supposed to be angry about, and they're lying, as they always do. Well, this is what I mean about ticking. This is almost like a greatest hits of the big show, isn't it? Because are they lying consciously, or are they just too stupid to realise how stupid they look? So Sue Gray's inquiry ran independently of the Metropolitan Police's inquiry. They looked, I think, at pretty much the same evidence, and the Metropolitan Police issued 126 fines to people because Downing Street was basically Stringfellows during the entirety of the lockdowns that the rest of us were doing our best to observe. The home and office of Boris Johnson had been turned into a nightclub. And yet somehow there's an attempt today to claim that all of the evidence that led Sue Gray to her conclusions and the Metropolitan Police to their conclusions, count them, 126 fines, and don't forget the current Prime Minister got one of them. Apparently it was all part of some leftist conspiracy. How many times have I sat here and said to you, how stupid do they think you are? How stupid do they think you are? Is this proof, for Daily Mail front page, is this proof the PartyGate probe was Labour plot? Well, let's have a think about that, lads. And don't forget, the editor of the Daily Mail, Ted Verity, is hoping for a knighthood from Boris Johnson's resignation honours, and his former boss, Paul Dacre, is hoping for an actual seat in the House of Lords, presumably sitting next to Evgeny Lebedev, the son of a former KGB officer, described by Canadian authorities as a member of Vladimir Putin's inner circle and heavily sanctioned as a result. But in this country, well, their family can buy newspapers. In Canada, they get sanctioned. So maybe Dacre will be sitting next to Lebedev in the House of Lords. It's important to remember that. You may be thinking, why the hell are they still going into bat for Boris Johnson? He's a completely busted flush. Even his withdrawal agreement has fallen to pieces under the vaguest pressure, and now he's suggesting that he's not going to vote for Rishi Sunak's, even though it's measurably better than the one that he actually signed, never mind voted for. So why, you may wonder, are the Daily Mail going into bat on this again? There are two or three reasons. The first is they don't know what else to do. You know, you've got a Labour leader, a Labour Party, which is looking increasingly likely to win the next general election. And then Keir Starmer is going to do things like clamp down on non-dom tax avoidance, perfectly legal, but deeply immoral. And guess what well, you don't need me to join the dots for you, do you? Who at the Daily Mail could possibly be concerned about a clampdown on non-dom tax arrangements? Let me stroke my beard for a few moments. Who could possibly be absolutely livid about the prospect of having to pay the same proportion of their income in tax that you do on yours? Who could that? I don't know. And who could possibly be hoping for a seat in the House of Lords from the busted and disgraced Boris Johnson? Yes, that would be Paul Dacre. And who could possibly be hoping for a night? That would be the current editor, Ted Verity. So that's one reason why they're doing this. They genuinely fear a Labour government, and largely for financial reasons. And then, of course, they also need to keep Boris Johnson's reputation as inflated as possible until at least the resignation honours list gets over the line. Otherwise, they're never going to get the baubles that they've spent their entire lives dreaming of. What other reason could there be? Well, that's it, I think, actually. That's all I've got. Well, I don't know. So what are they actually getting so cross about? I don't know, James. What? Sorry? What are they actually getting so cross about? Because it's not Sue Gray who broke a swing belonging to Boris Johnson's latest child in the Downing Street garden. It's not Sue Gray whose vomit had to be cleaned up by Downing Street cleaners. It's not Sue Gray who was engaging in flagrante delicto while the rest of us couldn't even visit our mums or get into the care homes where our grandparents were dying. It's not Sue Gray who threw a party on the night before Prince Philip's funeral. It's not Sue Gray who bought a wine fridge or actually took a suitcase to Tesco to fill it with booze that would then be wheeled back to the home stroke office of Boris Johnson. It's not Sue Gray who was singing karaoke while the rest of us were going on our restricted walks. It's not Sue Gray who had a birthday party and a big sing-song or a knees up. It's not Sue Gray who did any of these things. It's Boris Johnson and his Downing Street colleagues. So genuinely, what are they angry about? The people who pretended to be furious for 2 weeks on their front page about Keir Starmer having a perfectly legal curry with his colleagues are now very furious about the fact that he's given a job to Sue Gray, who he's known for years. He knew her when he was Director of Public Prosecutions, and she was the one. And do you remember why she got the job? Investigating the parties? Because the bloke originally appointed, Simon Case, the Cabinet Secretary, was implicated. It looked like he'd probably attended one or two. So that was the kind of bloke that Boris Johnson originally wanted to undertake it. And the question of independence was, of course, never really questioned.
Sue Gray is independent and is preparing the report in her own time without coming under pressure from the government.
But here's the thing. Imagine she was the most biased, partisan, utterly twisted, completely corrupt human being that had ever walked the earth. How could she have manufactured all the evidence that led the Metropolitan Police to issue 126 fines? Go on, seriously, riddle me that. It's quite funny listening to them trying to work out what they're supposed to be angry about. Oh, well, what if Boris Johnson had appointed her then? How would you fit? He did. He appointed her to investigate the parties because her independence was beyond question. Don't take my word. Listen to J-Dog.
Sue Gray is independent.
The appointment of a top civil servant as Keir Starmer's Chief of Staff shows the PartyGate probe was a Labour stitch-up, Tory MPs claimed last night. So I'd ask you again, how does the appointment of Sue Gray as Keir Starmer's Chief of Staff somehow render her responsible for the broken swing, the wine fridge, the suitcases full of booze, the sexual relations, the parties, the karaoke, the vomit all over the corridors, the party on the eve of Prince Philip's? How does Keir Starmer giving her a job somehow make her responsible for all of those things that led the Metropolitan Police quite independently to issue 126 fines? What are you supposed to be getting angry about today? Because I genuinely don't know. It's the flimsiest lump of red meat that I think the Daily Mail have ever thrown into the mix. This attempt to claim that suitcases full of booze being wheeled into Downing Street when you couldn't visit your dying dad in a care home were somehow invented by Sue Gray or conjured up by the civil servant charged with investigating it after it emerged as a result of reporting, not as a result of honesty, that the bloke Boris Johnson originally put in the job had probably attended parties himself or had certainly known about them. And it's somehow Sue Gray's fault that Boris Johnson denied that there were any parties and then admitted that there had been parties but insisted that he hadn't known about them, and then admitted that there had been parties but swore blind that he hadn't attended them, and then admitted that there had been parties and conceded that he had attended them, and then claimed that he somehow failed to realise that they were parties, and then got hit with a Metropolitan Police fine alongside 125 other people. That today, the Daily Mail editor, Ted Verity, hoping for a knighthood from the same Boris Johnson, wants you to believe that it was somehow conjured from the ether by the diabolical mental ministrations of a woman called Sue Gray, a woman whose name you only know because she got the job of investigating the parties after the bloke that Boris Johnson gave it to turned out to be neck deep in the whole sordid shenanigans himself.